Here we're going to tie a Mercury RS2. First thing we're going to do is just get our gray thread started here on the hook. I went ahead and added a clear Mercury Midge bead to the fly. That's the signature bead for this fly. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some gray or some dun colored Hackle fibers. We're going to strip the fibers right off of the feather. So I just end up with a little bundle of Hackle fibers here. And we're going to tie these in for our tail. We want our tail to be fairly short. We don't want to make it too long. For this fly it needs to be about half of the length of the shank of the hook. And I try to even up these fibers as much as possible, which isn't actually very easy to do sometimes. So I sometimes take a couple of bundles here and see if I can't get the tips nice and even. Once you have a bundle, you're just going to measure it out so it's about half the length of the shank of the hook. Then you're going to tie those in. As I tie these in, I kind of pull them up off the shank of the hook. That way they stay centered and they stay on top of the shank of the hook. I don't really want them to roll from side to side. And then you could trim out the butt ends or the excess. Now we're going to dub a nice fine body. For that we're just going to use some Superfine dubbing. You have to be very careful how much you use. For this fly we don't use very much at all. We basically put enough dubbing on our thread just to kind of coat the thread. If you use too much you'll end up with a very bulky body, which is not the way this fly is supposed to be tied. So I just add a little bit in the beginning just to get it started. And I can add more and creep my way up the thread, keeping the body nice and slender. Now once I get up to the thorax region, I'm just going to stop for a minute. And I'm going to tie in the flashback or the wing case. And for this I use a little different material than some other people probably use. You can use Antron or Z-lon yarn, but I like to add a little bit of flash to the wing case, and for that reason I use a material called DNA Hollow Fusion. The reason is you can see here how there's flash mixed in to the white DNA fibers, and that actually makes a perfect wing case for this fly. And all I'm going to do is just take a chunk about a quarter of a diameter of a pencil or so. I'm going to tie that in right behind the bead. I'm going to leave a little bit of room here. I don't want to take it all the way up to the bead. And I just trim out the butt ends. And I'm going to take that back about a quarter of the way from the bead. And then we're going to dub the thorax. For that I'm just going to use the same dubbing, just a little bit of gray. Superfine. I'm just going to build a very slender thorax here. If you had too much dubbing you can just tear it out of there. It's better to add less dubbing than too much dubbing on these flies. They're meant to be very slim. Now I'm going to trim this wing case. I kind of pull it up and forward because I kind of want it to stand up. I'm going to trim this wing case about the length of my thorax. Just like so. That might be a little bit longer than I like it, but it's close. There we go. Once you've got that trimmed, you can whip finish right behind the bead. That's all there is to a Mercury RS2. Very simple fly to tie, very effective. Could be tied in a lot of different colors and sizes. That's the Mercury RS2.